Most of us have heard the stories of people who've had close brushes with death, and they say they saw their lives flashing before their eyes, or they found themselves moving towards a bright light. Some people put these tales in the same category with UFO sightings and conspiracy theories. But recent studies suggest that whatever the experiences may mean, there may be a biological explanation for how they occur. Let's watch.
Is there life after death? If so, what is it like? These questions have been asked throughout the ages, and they've produced countless different answers. Now, a scientific study offers new insights. The new findings focus on near-death experiences, cases involving people who claim to have crossed the line between life and death.
All types of people have near-death experiences. In fact, one of the intriguing things about them is that they're remarkably more common than acknowledged.
The interesting thing about near-death experiences is that people who die and come back have very amazing things to talk about.
Joe Spiro was training at the National Fire Academy in Emmitsburg, Maryland, when he suffered a heart attack. His experience occurred as he was being airlifted to Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore.
As the helicopter lifted off, I could hear the blades whirring, and I remember darkness. It was a soft darkness. It wasn't terrifying or horrifying. In that darkness, I realized that I had died.
Joe's friend, Bill Taylor, also had a near-death experience when a virus attacked his heart, causing cardiac arrest.
Your energy's draining, and all of a sudden, you just have to let go, and wherever you go is where you're going to go. And so I let go, and all of a sudden, I wasn't here anymore.
Dr. Kevin Nelson believes these perceptions are produced by biological reactions.
They happen at a time when the body engages in what we call the fight or flight response, which is the programming that our nervous system has to respond to dangers. Our study looked at the brain switch of people who've had near-death experience, and what we found was that that switch appears to be different in people who've had a near-death experience.
I remember out of my peripheral vision, noticing a bright light.
Instead of moving from wakefulness to sleep or sleep to wakefulness, the brain switch in people who've had a near-death experience is more likely to allow a blending of these states of wakefulness with the REM stage of sleep. And this blending is called REM intrusion.
As I was moving into the light, I sensed that there was something or someone very close nearby, somebody that I felt that I knew as a friend or a family member. I also remember, as going through this light, what others would describe as reliving one's life. Well, I don't remember all the details of it. I do remember at the end, it was a very humbling experience.
Activation of the REM system does engage parts of the brain that do cause hallucinations, but these are unlike any other hallucination that we see in other circumstances and other conditions.
It was at that time that there was a sense of forgiveness. It was as if everything that you had done had been forgiven. And you were clean and clear. You were innocent.
Surprisingly, many experiencers say their brushes with death were actually peaceful.
I just found myself way out in space, looking back on everything. Nothing was behind me. It was all of the stars and everything was in front of me. And there's just an unexplainable intensity of love that you feel.
Some people even profess to have received spiritual guidance or to have seen things yet to come.
Felt like I was with a group of people that I couldn't see, but I knew they were there.
I didn't experience seeing other souls or other spirits or departed loved ones. I just was sort of by myself, but was not afraid. There's no fear there.
The next thing I knew was the helicopter rotors again. I could feel it. We were descending, and we had landed with a thud on top of Johns Hopkins University Hospital.
Whatever near-death experiences may mean, those who have had them say that their lives have been changed forever.
Life after death is a matter of faith, and it's a matter of why these experiences are happening. Science, in particular the workings of the brain, are concerned with how the brain works during these experiences, not the why.
But the basic fact is that most people do have stories. And so what that says is that after the moment of death, there's still something out there waiting.
There's an absolute feeling that this is home, and that this is where you came from, and this is where you're going to go back. You could be there forever and be as comfortable and happy for the rest of eternity.
Joining me to discuss his research on near-death experiences is Dr. Jeffrey Long. Dr. Long is the founder of the Near-Death Experience Research Foundation and serves on the board of directors of the International Association for Near-Death Studies. He practices radiation oncology in Tacoma, Washington, and holds a medical degree from the University of Iowa. Welcome to the Daily Apple.
Well, thank you.
So how do you explain a near-death experience from a biological standpoint?
Well, that's what's so interesting to me as a physician. I've considered all possible explanations of near-death experience, and actually over 20 have been proposed over the years. And at the end result of my looking over all possible explanations, I continue to feel that their near-death experience is medically inexplicable.
So when you think of a near-death experience, what exactly is the definition of that in your mind?
There's a little bit of different opinion about what a near-death experience is, but in general, a near-death experience is considered to happen when somebody comes close to death. They have a life-threatening event, their heart may stop, they stop breathing, and unlike most people that would go unconscious, about 15% of people that are in that life-threatening event have a very lucid, which means a very conscious or alert experience, and that pattern of elements that's so consistent at that point in time is called a near-death experience.
So do you personally believe in afterlife?
Absolutely. I had my doubts a little bit, but once I started this research 8 years ago and became aware of the content of near-death experiences and reviewed over 1,000 near-death experiences, that really sealed my personal opinion that absolutely there is life after death, and it's wonderful.
Where's the connection between radiation oncology and near-death experiences? How did that come together for you?
No relationship whatsoever. Okay. Yeah, radiation oncology, of course, is the use of radiation to treat cancer, and it's really not related to the study of near-death experiences at all.
That's what my father does, by the way. He's a radiation oncologist.
No kidding.
Go ahead.
Oh. So I became interested in near-death experience when I saw the term in a medical journal that I discovered quite by accident while I was looking up a cancer-related topic. And then immediately was interested and wondered why more people weren't doing research on this. And then a couple years later, when I had a friend and his wife visit me while I was doing my training for radiation oncology, his wife shared a remarkable near-death experience, and I was just fascinated. So from that point forward, I said, I've got to learn more about this. That's where I set up the website for people to share their near-death experiences. I was a little skeptical. I'm a hard-nosed physician that treats cancer, and so I really need to see the direct evidence. So I put up the website so people could share their experiences with me so I could find out for myself.
Hold that thought and we'll get back to the research foundation that you created. It's time for another short break. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment to continue our discussion about near-death experiences with Dr. Jeffrey Long.
Do you know? In 1907, Dr. Douglas Duncan McDougall discovered that upon death, the human body sheds 21 grams of its body weight. According to Dr. McDougall, what part of our anatomy do we lose that causes this weight loss? Do you know? According to Dr. McDougall, what part of our anatomy do we lose that causes this weight loss? Answer: the soul. However, due to his questionable methods and experiments, Dr. McDougall's conclusion is not considered a very credible one.
We're back to continue our discussion about near-death experiences with Dr. Jeffrey Long, founder of the Near-Death Experience Research Foundation. Tell me a little bit more about the research foundation that you founded.
Well, the website was set up in the foundation back in 1998 to collect near-death experience accounts and then post them back on the website. And as a result of that, we've accrued nearly 1,000 near-death experiences over the years, and so it's been a remarkable part of my life to be able to share these experiences and then learn them and study them from the experiences people have shared over all these years.
In the segment, we talked a little bit about, or the physician did, the REM intrusion theory. Do you believe that this is, a reality? Does the research play out in it?
Well, the study actually involved a survey of 55 people that had a near-death experience and 55 people that didn't have a near-death experience. In that survey that was published in that REM intrusion article earlier this year, 40% of the people that had a near-death experience answered no to every single question to assess if they'd had a lifetime history of any REM intrusion at all. So that doesn't sound to me like it's likely that that plays a major role.
And just reiterate really quickly, REM intrusion is what?
REM intrusion is REM, stands for rapid eye movement, and that's a normal part of sleeping. Generally it occurs early in the course of a night's sleep or right before you wake up. REM intrusion occurs when you're partially awake and you have hallucinations or sometimes a sense of paralysis that can occur. Not unusual,
Sure.
about 20 or 40% of people in the population have it.
What is it exactly that gives you faith that there's an afterlife, or makes you think that there might be?
Well, first of all, no medical explanation has been advanced that explains all of the near-death experience elements, or even most of them. And then second of all, there's certain aspects of the near-death experience that I don't think anybody is going to be able to explain, such as people blind from birth having visual near-death experiences, and there have been some of these that have been identified over time.
When my grandmother, right before she passed away, she, I guess, had an experience, and I was alone with her, and she, saw my grandfather had already passed away, and all of her relatives and everything. And she began to explain to me where she was, verbally articulated where she was, and she was very lucid. And then she came back, and we were having a conversation, and she remembered everything about it as though it was a dream that had just happened. What are some of the stories that you've heard that have just blown you away?
Oh, well, some of the stories that blow me away, of course, are the people blind from birth that have a visual near-death experience. We've encountered a person who is deaf from birth, who in the near-death experience, communication was not through written material or through sign language, but was with the usual type of telepathic communication that's typical in near-death experiences, so no variation on that pattern at all. I think it's just seeing so many near-death experiences that have that remarkably consistent pattern of elements, not like any pattern of hallucinations or dreams or any other type of altered consciousness. It just seems to stick out heads and shoulders above any other type of group of human experiences that I'm aware of medically.
There's so much terminology around it that I'm not familiar with, like veridical perception. What is that exactly?
That's just a fancy term for for the situation that occurs early in many near-death experiences, about half. Consciousness seems to rise up above the body. Very typically the point of consciousness, that being where they see and hear things, is located above the body, usually near the ceiling. From that point of reference, the near-death experiencers describe often frantic efforts at their resuscitation. And what's remarkable about near-death experiences is that what they can see and hear during that phase of the experience almost always is absolutely correct. And this is occurring when they're clinically dead, if you will, their heart stopped, they've stopped breathing, and they're unconscious.
So in the piece, it seemed like people, when they came back, they said that it was, it humbled them. They were very happy and it was comfortable. Have you heard that a lot?
Oh, absolutely. It's very typical of people that have near-death experiences that it's very life-changing. Often it takes a long period of time to fully integrate the experience, but there's very typical what we call after effects after this experience. And one of the more common is that the great majority of people that have a near-death experience lose their fear of death.
That's interesting. When people hear pieces like this, do you think it's psychosomatic at all when someone, passes away and then they come back? Because all the explanations are exactly the same. Could it be from hearing it while you were alive?
Well, don't forget that these people are fully unconscious, and people have actually done studies where they asked people that clinically died, had a heart attack, to describe what their resuscitation looked like. The people that had a near-death experience that actually saw the resuscitation were incredibly accurate down to details, including at times the serial number on the machine used to resuscitate them.
Fascinating.
But if they didn't have a near-death experience and they were asked to guess, it would be Completely off. Details would be completely off. They wouldn't even know or not know if they were shocked, for example.
Talking about the details, though, what if you have cultural backgrounds or ethnic backgrounds that are different? Do you see any differences in the near-death experiences between the variety of people that have them?
In order to find out what cultural influences might be on near-death experiences, we actually have our website where we invite people to share their experiences, translated into over 20 different foreign languages, including some languages from non-Western civilizations, such as Arabic. To our astonishment, we are seeing people from a wide variety of cultures, including completely non-Western cultures, have remarkably similar near-death experiences to what are described in America.
So it's cross-cultural. Do you think that there are any drug or medical reasons why a person might be having a near-death experience?
That's actually been studied. There's been what we call prospective studies, where they actually they followed the patients from the time that they had their life-threatening event, usually a heart attack, and then they tried to assess if there were any influence of drugs or anything else that was given to the patient. No influence whatsoever has been identified.
Just very quickly, future research. What do you recommend we do in terms of future research?
I think we need to continue to encourage people to share their near-death experiences. I think we need to continue to record these experiences, because I think this observational part of science is always going to be an important part, especially with near-death experiences. And then I think as time goes on, we need to try to do what makes sense scientifically with other phenomena like this. We need to see if there's any reasonable scientific explanations that anybody can find. And only when we've excluded all possible medical explanations can we then conclude it's absolutely medically inexplicable.
Wow, really interesting. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome.